Hello, everyone. I'm Janine Donnelly, Manager of Webinars for IBM Systems Magazine. And on behalf of IBM Systems Magazine, I'd like to welcome you to our presentation. We will be holding a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. You may ask a question at any time during the event by entering it in the Q&A panel. If you experience technical difficulties during the webinar, please use the Q&A panel to alert us, and someone will assist you. You may download a PDF version of the slide deck by clicking on the drop-down menu labeled Event Resources. You'll find that on the left side of your screen, and know that you can download those right from the platform without being disconnected from the webinar. Today's webinar, Automated Tape Migration Without Using Mainframe MIPs, It's Possible, is sponsored by Optica Technologies. Our featured speakers today are Michael Daly, Sean Seitz, and Chris Mason. Michael is Chief Operating Officer and Vice President of Worldwide Sales for Optica Technologies. Michael joined Optica in 2007. Prior to joining Optica, Michael held executive positions at several different IT companies, including a software as a service startup, a leading provider of storage area networking solutions, as well as at IBM. Sean is a Vice President of Technical Services, responsible for technical sales, services delivery, and product support worldwide. His 30-plus years of mainframe experience includes business management and executive positions in technical sales and support, product management, business development, and consulting. Chris is a senior technical services engineer responsible for designing, implementing, and supporting Optica's ZVT virtual tape solutions worldwide, and for providing technical sales support to Optica's resellers and business partners. With over 35 years of mainframe experience, 25 in implementing and testing DR solutions, Chris is an experienced engineer and, Chris is an experienced service engineer. So now that I've kind of modeled that, apologies, Chris, I will turn the presentation over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Janine. Really appreciate your help, and thanks to IBM Systems Magazine for doing a fabulous job in promoting and hosting the event today. So with that, let me get into the agenda, give you a sense of what we're going to cover today. I'll cover a little bit about Optica's background and maybe take a little different tack than we have in the past, just for those who aren't familiar with our company. We'll talk a little bit about mainframe virtual tape. We've been in the market for over 5 years now, and so we'll give you a flavor for kind of what we've seen happen over that 5-year period, and some of the challenges and obstacles that we're seeing customers struggle with as they look at opportunities to think about moving to a new virtual tape system like ZVT. And then we'll get into the core of the discussion and talk about really a new paradigm, a new way of thinking about migration from any current platform to ZVT. And then when you think about that, if we can make that easier, if we can make the adoption and the move to a new platform like ZVT easier, it makes sense for you to get an update on where we are with the product portfolio, and in particular some of the advanced features that we've brought to the table. As you'll see, we've continuously tried to invest and improve in the product, and I think as we go through that, you'll get a chance to see that there. And then we'll cover disaster recovery in a couple of ways. First of all, it's been a very unusual year for everyone. COVID-19 has made it that way, and obviously there have been other issues, wildfires and other things that we've had to deal with that have made this year unique. So I think it's a good opportunity for us to kind of revisit the fundamentals of disaster recovery and some of the best practices around disaster recovery. And we're lucky to have Chris Mason on the team, who's got a tremendous amount of experience in this area. So those would be a couple of things that might be good primers or cheat sheets, if you will, to think about, how you should be thinking about DR in your business. and then how do we support it and enable you to execute on DR best practices. And so Chris will also take you through one-click DR. Then we'll kind of summarize things, make sure we kind of recap what we've said, and then we'll do Q&A that Janine will lead us through at the end. So we welcome any questions that you have along the way. If we don't answer them today, we'll be sure to follow up with you after the call-in and answer those questions for you. So a little bit of background on Optica. We've been in business for over 50 years. We are a business that gained a tremendous amount of credibility and are installed in thousands of data centers around the world. We've got a significant investment in mainframe skills. We've been focused on mainframe for the last 30 years. We've got a mainframe lab in Louisville, Colorado, and we've been a strategic partner of IBM Z since 2002, and have really made it our practice of delivering solutions that serve what we think are underserved segments of the mainframe market. Obviously, protocol converters were a solution just like that, right? We had exclusive capability to provide those to IBM customers as they move from SCON to FICON. Same is true for mainframe virtual tape. We introduced mainframe virtual tape in 2015. We did it based on our strategic relationship with IBM Z and them identifying mainframe virtual tape as an area that they felt like the Z ecosystem was not providing the broadest segment of mainframe customers with the choices that they need. And so we entered in 2015, delivered our next generation of product, our second generation of the platform in May of 2018. And we've been pleased with the market acceptance. And in order to continue to drive that market acceptance, we've continued to focus on adding features to the platform and making enhancements to the platform while we continue to support our customers in a world-class way and ensuring that each of them are completely satisfied as we go through the process from pre-sale design through implementation, post-sale support, and beyond. So if you think about the mainframe virtual tape market, it hasn't, in one sense, in terms of its size, it hasn't changed a lot between 2015 and today. It's still in that kind of sub $500 million market opportunity. We still have IBM and Dell EMC as the share leaders. We've got Oracle that's been kind of making their way out of the market over the last couple of years. And then we've got Luminex as a long-established player. We entered this market back in 2015, which we thought was a very solid product, and we had a reputation for promising and delivering on high-quality products with support that customers have grown to value. And we did it with the backing of IBM Z and the strategic relationship that we had with them. So that gave us, an entry into the market that we felt like we could be successful with. But we've been asking ourselves since that day, how can we make ZVT better, and how can we make adoption of ZVT easier? And as we've met with hundreds and hundreds of customers over these 5 years, the challenge we see to change has been relatively consistent, right? The existing platform, we know it works. It's hard for us to change. There's maybe some proprietary elements of the technology that worry us, that make it more difficult for us to consider a change. We've got limited skills and resources, meaning we really don't want to make any operational changes or changes to the processes that we've had in place that have worked for us for years and years. And obviously that elevates the perceived cost and risk to changing that platform. And then offsetting that, we've got the challenge of increasing maintenance expenses, end of support dates that put you in a more difficult position in terms of service and support. Or we've got a new product to replace the old one that's substantially more complex and maybe really wasn't designed for the needs of your business as you look at it today. In addition to that, the kicker often is migration, right? How do I get there from here? And is there a way to do that that gives me comfort so I'm not losing sleep at night when I think about moving to a new technology like ZVT? We tried to validate this, kind of question of migration. We did an IBM Systems Magazine webinar in January and asked a couple of poll questions to try to kind of see, we think migration's a big issue. We want to kind of validate that with end users. And an easy way to do that was via the poll questions on the phone. And so we asked a couple of questions, one about migration, one about migration without mainframe, using mainframe cycles. And in both instances, we found, for example, data migration is a medium or high impact or high concern item for 93% of the respondents. And then when we asked about, hey, would it be nice if we could do the migration and do it without the use of mainframe cycles, and 92% of clients came back and said, yeah, I think that would be interesting to us. So when we thought about hostless migration and a way to make that elegant, this was good validation for us. And so that's what we want to kind of do now is transition to that portion of the discussion and take you through that in a little more detail. So I'm going to turn this over to Sean Seitz and have him lead that piece of the dialogue.
Thank you, Mike. And I wanted to just take a moment and thank everyone for being here. We're thrilled to be here and appreciate you taking the time as well. So let's talk about hostless migration. And sort of to kick off this segment of the presentation, I want to just do a little bit of contrasting here between kind of the traditional, what we would call a host-based tape migration methodology versus hostless. And we'll talk about what hostless really is, what that means. But if I could call your attention to the graphic on the right here, this represents what we all recognize as sort of the traditional way that you migrate your tape environment from a legacy system to a new virtual tape system, right? You have both systems connected to the mainframe. You have an application or utility that is a tape copy product on the mainframe, and you read the tapes in from the legacy system and you write them out to the new system. So that's essentially how it happens 100% of the time for customers up until now. They have to migrate the tapes via the mainframe, hence using mainframe cycles to do that. And as Mike said, that's fine. It's a tried and true way to do it. Everybody does it. It's very common. However, it's not certainly without risk or without the need for planning and the need to have a very well thought out path in order to do it successfully. So we'd like to introduce the newest feature that we offer called hostless migration. So the graphic on the left side here represents the topology for hostless migration. And so first, what is it? It's a industry unique functionality that will copy the tape directly from your legacy tape system. It doesn't matter if that's a physical tape environment or a virtual tape environment. And it will copy to the ZVT directly without using mainframe host cycles to move the data. So that orange arrow there you see, hostless import, in the graphic, underneath that arrow is the FICON link. So you're actually moving your tape or importing your tape from the legacy system into the ZVT over a FICON connection that is direct from the legacy system to the ZVT. Okay? So that FICON interface is on our virtual tape node. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit more about configuration in the next slide or two. But the FICON ports of the VTN can be configured within the ZVT GUI as migration mode ports or standard virtual tape mode ports. So you can literally, with a couple clicks of the mouse in the GUI, you can change the behavior of the FICON interface from a migration port to a standard virtual tape port. Okay, so in this case, you obviously have, in this example, you have one FICON channel connected to the mainframe in standard virtual tape mode, and you have a second FICON interface from a VTN that's connected to the legacy tape system. And that, of course, is going to be configured in migration mode. Okay. Because the ZVT emulates the FICON chiplet, we look like the host, we look like the mainframe to the legacy system. And because of that, we can migrate encrypted tapes, compressed tapes, deduplicated tapes, even proprietary file formats. So the way to think about that is if you're connected to a mainframe and you're going to read a tape off of any technology, it doesn't matter if it's compressed, encrypted, deduped. It doesn't matter because that tape technology will put it back into a standard mainframe readable format before it is read in by the mainframe. So the same thing applies. When we're emulating that mainframe chiplet to the legacy tape system, it doesn't matter what format that is. It's going to come into us as a standard file format. So it doesn't matter if it's physical tape, virtual tape. It doesn't matter if it's compressed, deduplicated, or even a proprietary file format. It doesn't matter. We seamlessly support all the above. Okay. So let's look at both the configuration for hostless migration and the process. We'll talk a little bit about the process and how it works and how simple it is. So first of all, ZVT Control Center is a part of our solution, the ZVT solution, that comes with every system that we sell into a ZOS environment. And the ZCC Control Center is a set of utilities that were developed by our partner, our good partner, DTS Software. And we provide the ZCC set of tools with every system we sell, as I mentioned, into ZOS customer environments. And the ZCC package is installed on the mainframe under ZOS, and it can be used to do some advanced management and monitoring of the ZVT, but it has a very powerful element as it relates to hostless migration and how it lends to migration management in both a host-based migration environment and a hostless. We're going to focus on hostless first, but as I mentioned previously, each VTN of the ZVT, the virtual tape node, has 2 FICON ports. And in this case, in this example, one is connected to the mainframe in standard mode and one is connected to the legacy tape system in migration mode. And what this allows us to do is the customer can actually continue normal tape operations. You can see the legacy tape system is online to the mainframe, the ZVT is online to the mainframe, and we can actually do the migration, import tapes offline from the mainframe, from the legacy system into the ZVT at the same time that normal tape operations are ongoing. How do we do that? How can we do that? ZCC is the key. ZCC actually keeps track of where the tape lives. Is it still on the legacy system or has it already been imported into the ZVT? So ZCC migrates the status of the migration. It synchronizes the tape management system, which in turn keeps the TCDB synchronized, and it directs the tape mounts to the appropriate system. So again, if the tape has not been migrated yet, the mount goes to the legacy system. If it's already been migrated, then the mount goes to the ZVT. So the customer has all the power here. They can actually progress through their migration at whatever pace they desire. They can stop and start it at any time. ZCC keeps track of where the migration is left off and resumes at that point. And again, the key is tape operations continue without impact because the ZCC set of utilities is intelligent enough to direct the mounts to the appropriate tape technology. So to start out, what we do is we actually use ZCC to build what we call a migration tape list. And there's a utility within ZCC that uses the customer's tape management system as input, or the catalog as input, and we actually build a list of tapes. And it can be sorted, and you can delete tapes and tape ranges. So you create this tape list with a very simple set of utilities, and that tape list is what is used to manage the migration. Okay, so as I mentioned, you can start migrating. You can migrate, overnight, for example, and then in the morning, if you want to pause migration, you can do that. And then if you want to pick up again after business hours or vice versa, you can initiate the migration again, and ZCC is intelligent enough to pick up exactly where it left off, tracking the status, knowing what's where, keeps track of what tapes are migrated, what tapes have not been migrated, etc. And then automatically updates the tape management system. Okay. So one thing to make clear is that ZCC can be used for both traditional host-based migrations and hostless migrations. But the key being with hostless is that the customer for the first time can actually perform a tape migration from a legacy system to the ZVT during normal tape operations because of the intelligence of ZCC. Okay, so that's a very new and unique and valuable technology. So in summary, Mike mentioned that migrating to a new tape system is always kind of top of mind for customers when they're considering replacing aging technology, whether it's a physical environment or an aging virtual tape environment. Migration is always the first risk item that they list or mention, almost always. This takes a lot of the risk away and provides peace of mind because it's very simple, it's very efficient, and easy to execute with this set of tools. As I mentioned, no mainframe MIPs required to move the tapes. That's an industry first. Okay, and we can migrate from any source system to the ZVT, physical or virtual. No additional hardware or software is required, folks. So it's a standard software feature that is comes on the ZVT. Okay, so it's a licensed feature that's on the ZVT, so it's software, and it can be enabled or not used, but it's going to be there for ZOS customers. Okay, ZCC is going to be there for ZOS customers. Hostless migration comes on the ZVT and can be used for both ZOS and VM-VSE environments. So I wanted to make sure that was clear. So as I mentioned before, the ZVT emulates a host channel, and therefore we support the movement or the import of encrypted data, compressed, deduplicated, and proprietary file formats transparently, so no problem. Up to 16 devices can be identified and be used for migration of tapes simultaneously. And the migration can not only be controlled by ZCC in ZOS environments, but in general on any operating system environment by the ZVT GUI or even via CLI. Okay. As far as tape management synchronization goes, for ZOS environments, again, that automatically happens with ZCC. For VM-VSE environments, given that there's really no concept of storage location in a VM-VSE world, there's no tape management system synchronization required. And after the migration is complete, just point your tape management system to the ZVT devices and off you go. Okay, so no synchronization is required after migrating in a VM-VSE environment. Okay, I want to talk quickly about the family. Mike mentioned that we have some new features and some enhancements to our product line. I want to quickly overview the family so everybody has an understanding of the offering. We have 3 models in our family, the ZVT family. Starting on the left side, the 5000 INAS. This is the most modular, scalable, and resilient solution in the market, in our opinion. Okay, you have an entry capacity at 24 terabytes of usable capacity that scales up to multi-petabyte. And with the building blocks that in the modular architecture that we use, that's made up of the virtual tape node that connects to the mainframe. VF-Icon is really the engine that virtualizes the volume. And then we have 2 types of storage node, an intelligent storage node and capacity storage node that allows you to scale seamlessly and dynamically in capacity all the way up to the multiple petabytes of capacity in a single system. Okay. Of course, we offer the high availability architecture. Each system in the INAS product line, you can have up to 8 virtual tape nodes. Again, those are the nodes connected to the mainframe via VF-Icon. Those, of course, can be clustered, providing high availability and failover across the virtual tape nodes with shared tape database. The virtual tape drives that can be configured is up to 2048 virtual tape drives in the largest system, so it's 256 per VTN. Okay. There are plenty of virtual tape drives that can be configured. In terms of performance, each virtual tape node drives approximately 1,000 megabytes a second of performance. So with an 8 VTN system, of course, you're going to be in the 8,000 megabytes a second range in terms of performance. Data deduplication is a standard feature on the INAS, and that's very important in terms of driving efficiency and capacity, and frankly, cost of storage. So if you're using your mainframe virtual tape system primarily or exclusively for backups, and you're keeping a lot of copies of your backups, that data is going to be extremely reducible, if you will, and the deduplication technology will very efficiently reduce the capacity requirement if you have a lot of duplicate copies of your data. We have a little bit of a formatting shift here, so I apologize for that. We've got a little bit of overlap. The last bullet here, the ISN WAN optimized replication. Because the system deduplicates the data, it creates a very efficient replication that we call WAN optimization, and that's our ISN replication that occurs between the storage nodes of the INAS system. Only the deduplicated unique data is replicated, so it's an extremely efficient replication method, and even if you have a low bandwidth connection between your facilities, it's not a problem because of the efficiency of this replication type of ISN replication. Okay. The 3000i is our entry-level product. 3000i is our all-in-one solution. So this is a 2U virtual tape node. It has onboard storage. Okay. There are 3 capacities available in the 3000i: 8 terabytes, 16 terabytes, and 24 terabytes. Those are usable metrics, so that's usable capacity of 8, 16, and 24. With our very efficient hardware compression capability that's standard, those usable capacities go to 32 terabytes, 64, and 96 of effective capacities. That's based on a 4-to-1 compression, which is a conservative ratio based on what we see in the field with our customers. So up to 96 terabytes of effective capacity after compression on the largest 3000i model. The 3000i comes standard with 16 virtual tape drives, but it can be licensed up to 256, so not a problem. So each VTN can go up to 256 virtual tape drives. And again, 1,000 megabytes a second is the expected performance with a 3000i, given that it's a single VTN node. Okay? And then finally on the right, the 5000 Flex model. This is an interesting, what I would consider an industry unique product in that it uses our standard virtual tape node technology, but it allows the customer to pair it with their own open system storage. So this is a solution that provides some strategic benefit if it fits. This may not be for every customer, but if you have a large investment in open system storage of any brand, as long as it's got a 10 gig NFS interface or a fiber channel interface on the storage, you can leverage available capacity on your own storage infrastructure and use it for your mainframe virtual tape application. Okay, so you can connect behind the Flex system any brand of storage, and we have a lot of examples in the field globally. These are just a few examples listed here of the storage vendors that we have in use in production behind the Flex system. Another nice benefit is that if you already have open system storage infrastructure with replication in place between your primary and your secondary data center, you can leverage that existing infrastructure, of course, that's already present by attaching your storage behind the Flex system. Okay. The Flex system can be configured in a clustered mode for high availability for NFS storage, okay, up to 8 VTNs. Again, up to 2,048 virtual tape drives and up to 8,000 megabytes a second in a clustered mode for the Flex system. Okay, so that is a bit of a niche offering that provides the customer with some really nice value if you have extra capacity in your open system storage architecture that you want to leverage for mainframe virtual tape. Okay, so a few minutes on enhanced features. As Mike said, we've been investing continually in ZVT, and we have some industry unique and high value features to talk about. So encryption at rest and in flight, that's a standard feature for all replication modes as well as data at rest across all three models. We offer worm on the 5000 INAS, so if you want a mutable copy of your data, you can use the worm feature and set up your tapes to only be written to, not read from, or written over. So that's we have customers taking advantage of the worm feature in different ways. Enhanced data integrity checking is a peace of mind feature, and what it does is we of course store the CRC from the mainframe. So the CRC from the mainframe is passed end to end all the way to the storage repository within the ZVT. And the integrity checking feature, what it does is you can set it to check the data a number of ways. But essentially what we do when the integrity check feature kicks off, we rebuild the CRC and we compare it against the stored CRC to verify that that data remains valid. You can set it up to do that immediately after you write the volume, sort of in a synchronous methodology, or you can set it to run in the background as a background task overnight. You can run through every one of your virtual volumes every night if you wish, just to verify that your data remains good. So it gives you some flexibility. It provides you with peace of mind. And believe it or not all of our competitors actually use CRC for data integrity checking. We discovered that because of hostless migration. We've migrated hostlessly from virtually every virtual tape vendor in the industry. And we recognize that not every vendor actually uses a CRC for data integrity. So this provides you with that assurance that whenever you need your data from the virtual tape system, whether it's in an hour or 10 years from now, you can be confident that you can read that tape. As far as replication goes, we have a couple different flavors of replication to provide you with flexibility. I mentioned intelligent storage node or ISN replication. That's the one that offers the WAN optimization. It's set up between storage nodes, so it only replicates the unique, new, and deduplicated data. We also offer virtual tape node to virtual tape node replication, and that provides the ability to set up synchronous replication, asynchronous replication in a couple different ways. And it also allows you the ability to connect to a cloud gateway. We have quite a few customers who have chosen to move tapes to the cloud, so you can use virtual tape node replication to do that, or you can actually set up a cloud gateway and do a direct write from the virtual tape node. So that's how we handle cloud support. Quite a few customers have taken advantage of that. Migration, we've talked about migration quite a bit, and hostless migration, the fact that it does not use any MIPs to move the data, an industry unique approach. ZVT Control Center license, again, comes with the solution for ZOS customers, which auto-synchronizes the tape catalog during migrations. It also provides this persistent audit status, as I mentioned. It keeps track of exactly where you are, so you know where you left off if you're stopping and starting your migration process. And the customer can fully control the rate and pace of the migration, which is a really nice feature. In terms of ease of operations, we offer automated scratch processing, and that's from the ZCC toolset. So when the system scratches the tape, ZCC sends a notification to the ZVT, so the ZVT always stays in sync from a scratch perspective. So that's automatic with ZCC. We offer the GUI interface that's extremely intuitive. We get a lot of feedback from customers how slick the GUI is. That GUI is available and is the same interface across all models of the product line. One-click DR is going to be talked about by Chris in the next section, but provides a very efficient means for setting up DR testing and actually setting up your DR ZVT in the event of a disaster as well, with literally a single click. So Chris is going to talk more about that. Multi-tenant support, we have quite a few service providers that have standardized their virtual tape system on Optica ZVT. And one of the big reasons for that is that we have multi-tenant features built in that allows them to confidently segment the customer's data so that you don't have the risk of cross connectivity or cross access between various customers and the data of other customers. And then finally, we take a great deal of pride in our support, and I think our customers would probably tell you that very readily. We have a very tried and true model of maintenance and support for our products, and one unique feature of our model is that we actually have partnered with IBM for nearly 20 decades, whereby we have the ability to leverage the IBM field force on our behalf to go on site and service the ZVT. So it's a seamless partnership, meaning we handle deploying the IBMer. Often it's the same SSR who you're used to seeing that supports your mainframe environment. But that SSR, when we deploy them, they're badged as Optica, and they basically are managed and controlled by us and are working on our behalf to support the ZVT. So it's a model that customers very much appreciate. Okay, I'd like to take the opportunity to introduce Chris Mason. Chris is, as mentioned by Janine at the top of the webinar, is a Senior Technical Services Engineer. Chris has been with Optica for almost a year now, and he's responsible for designing, implementing, and supporting our virtual tape products worldwide and providing technical sales support to our resellers and partners. What's great about Chris's experience is it's vast. He's done, like a lot of us in the mainframe world, he's worked in the IBM environment, IBM mainframe environment his entire career, so he has extensive Z experience, storage tape, SAN infrastructure experience. But for the last couple of decades, he's worked for SunGard, and so he has spent time designing, implementing, and testing DR solutions, which provide him with a very unique perspective and a lot of what we would call scar tissue as it relates to disaster recovery. So I'm going to turn it over to Chris here to talk about best practices and DR fundamentals, as well as our one-click DR.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. With all my years of experience, we figured we would just kind of go through what I've learned over the years and seen over the years of what disaster recovery really is about for IBM Z, and the gotchas and the things that I see that really not everybody thinks of with all the customers and testing and actual events I've gone through over the years between ComDisco and SunGard. So first, we're just going to go over some fundamentals that I see that I think are important. DR planning and preparedness is critical to your business and should be approached as if your business depends on it, because it does. We all know a lot of times our planning isn't in the same precise as if a real event happens, so don't get stuck in that. Your DR plan and readiness is only as good as what you invest in it. Do not fall into the trap of thinking that it will never happen to you. An out of sight, out of mind, or check the box mentality can significantly impact your business in the event of a real disaster. I've seen that over the years too, when customers would come in and test, and they'd do their testing, but they wouldn't do everything. And then when the event actually really happened is when they got in trouble. So just be prepared for that, and don't let that happen to you. Your DR environment, internal or outsourced, should reflect exactly what your requirements are in the event of an actual long-term disaster. Don't shortcut or shortchange your business. In using a DR service provider, remember to keep in mind that you are not in your own shop, so things will almost certainly be different, and you will need to change and adapt in order to be successful. Be prepared for this. And I saw that so many times over the years where a customer would come in and they'd say, well, we don't have to do that at home. And we'd be like, well, you're not at home, so you have to be prepared to do things a little bit different when you're at your DR provider. Many significant events like 9/11, major hurricanes, floods, earthquakes and power outages have exposed DR shortfalls over the years and severely impacted businesses. And after 9/11, we saw this huge 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina. Companies reemphasized DR planning and readiness. However, the diligence tends to fade over time because there's no new major events that keep people thinking about it all the time. So some of the best practices, some of the things I've seen over the years that I think are very important. So prepare your DR plan. Configurations, procedures, and planning should be prepared based on a total loss of the data center. So make your plan so that you are recovering everything, so that your configuration has everything, you're recovering everything. Detailed procedures should be written collaboratively, not from a single perspective, so that anyone within your organization can execute the recovery. I've seen that in an actual event where the guy that wrote the procedures wasn't there because he was busy taking care of his family, which is understandable, but they suffered for the first part of the recovery because the gentleman that wrote the procedures was not there to do it, and nobody really else knew how to do it. So just be careful of that. Review your DR hardware configuration requirements annually to make sure you're ready in the event of a real disaster. Remember to eliminate what's no longer required and to add any new requirements that you have, and review this annually. If you outsource your DR services, communicate to your provider any hardware, application, and operating system changes in your production data center, because these changes could affect your testing and recoverability. Software examples would be your operating system, your DB2, COBOL upgrades, hardware upgrades as well, especially your software and operating system, COBOL, because we saw many times, especially now the way IBM is doing things, is that when you upgrade your operating system, you can no longer run on the back processor, and it goes the other way around too. When you upgrade a mainframe, you might not be able to run on that old operating system anymore. COBOL with the new ARC level requirements, if you're running an ARC level with Z14 to compile everything, if you happen to be on an EC12 at your DR facility, anything that's compiled using that ARC level, that higher technology, will not work. So just be careful of those things. Apply all required OS and application maintenance at your production site as well for every IBM Z processor available at your DR provider. This is important as well. You don't want to lock yourself into just one processor. Your provider could have a Z14, a Z13, a Z15 available for testing, but at home you might be running on an EC12, and you only have maintenance applied for that. Apply the higher level maintenance for those processors so you can run and test on those processors as well. So in the event of a regional disaster, you have the ability to run on more than one processor. Test often, quarterly, and test thoroughly. Test as if there were actual disasters to be better prepared for when, if you actually have a real event. Schedule enough test time to recover and verify everything. All applications, databases, systems, LPARs, and network. Just test everything, make sure everything is good when you actually have a real event. Replicate both DASI and tape to your DR location if possible. Understandably, not everybody can do this, but at the very least, replicate all tape data. Replicating tape data reduces RPO and RTO and eliminates the risk of damaged or missing tapes. There's been many times over the years where customers are shipping tapes and they forgot to send their system tapes. We had a client one time that had to fly a guy from Seattle to Philadelphia just for one tape that they forgot. We had a time where we opened up the pack of tapes, all the pallets of tapes, and all the tubs were full with water because they were left on the tarmac at the airport in a major rainstorm. So things like that do happen. Replicating your data makes for a more efficient DR process as well. Back up and replicate everything to eliminate missing data. There's many times where we would have customers that would come in and they didn't back up and replicate everything because they were trying to save on capacity on the disaster recovery side, and then they were missing stuff. And so they got stuck with that as well. So just nowadays, it's better off just back up and replicate everything in your shop, because in a long-term DR event, if you're there for months, We actually had a customer that was there for over a year after Hurricane Katrina. You're going to need everything, even your test environments, your SMPE environment, all of that stuff. You're going to need everything in a long-term event, so just look at it that way. And our one-click DR makes things a little bit easier for you as well when it comes to getting prepared for your event, your test or your event. So one-click DR, normal production. So you have your production site and you have your DR site. So all your data is replicating from your prod file system to the prod replicated file system at your DR site. So when you're ready for a test, we built a customized DR script that runs in the background. Optica will build that for you and will maintain it if there's any changes that are done, any configuration changes that are done at any time. So what this does is it creates a clone of the file system in the ISN, the DR ISN, and it will mount that file system in the DR ZVT. The clone will contain all the virtual tapes currently and fully replicated to the DR ISN. The DR ZVT will import that Volseer tape database from the cloned file system, which makes your system ready within a few minutes to start tape resource. And this does not interfere with replication. So since we're creating a clone of that file system, your replication continues to go while you're doing your testing. And then at the end of your test, there's really no action required after DR testing. That file system just stays out there until you're ready for your next test. It'll overwrite that file system. And the beauty of this is it can go back the other way if you actually have an event. So if you actually have an event, you got to fail over to your recovery, to your DR side. We will work with you to create the customized script to be able to go back the other way. So that script will unmount all the file systems from the ZVTs in both data centers. We'll create a new prod file system in the prod ISN, or depending on how long you're out, if it's only out for a few hours or a day, whatever, we don't necessarily have to rewrite a whole prod file system. What we can do is just replicate back to that one, and it will just update what has changed with the deduplication and the WAN optimization, depending on how long you're out for and what's going on. We'll replicate all the tapes in the prod clone file system to the DR ISN, to the new prod file system in the prod ISN. Wait for all that replication to complete. Depending on what we're replicating, the time it's going to take to do that. The new prod file system is exported and mounted on the prod ZVT. The prod ZVT imports the Volseer database is ready to go back to normal tape operations at your production center. So everything is now back to production. And after that's done and everything's running, we now switch it back over to the way it was originally, where now you're running back on the production system, replicating back to the DR data center. And the beauty of this is, as well, that makes things simpler and easier, is that we see many times where customers are missing data that haven't replicated everything, or they forgot something, is that during your tests, you can go back to your production center, do another manual replication. You can go in there and do that, start a manual replication, it'll replicate the changed data over to the DR, and now you have that data, that tape Volseer, or that data set, or that something that you were missing, now at your DR data center during your test. So that's another nice advantage of having this ability. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to John and Mike.
Thanks very much, Chris, and thanks, Sean. Let me summarize, and then I'll turn it back over to Janine. I think we're going to have a little bit of time for questions, which is perfect. That's what we were planning on. So just to kind of recap, right? We talked about hostless migration and the bundle that we now have with ZCC for ZOS customers. That's dramatically simplifying and reducing some of the issues and challenges around migration and the capability to do that now hostlessly for ZOS and, quite frankly, for VM and VSE customers. Sean gave you a little update on ZVT technology, not only the modularity and the scalability of it and the flexibility of it, but gave you a sense of some of the enhanced features that are making this product even more easy to implement and manage. I also want to mention that we do use an extended life platform. So the idea is also that when you make an investment in ZVT, we're going to be able to support it typically, longer than the traditional players in the industry. You combine that with our world-class service and support and our satisfaction guarantee, along with the capabilities around one-click DR, which, again, in the COVID world, we certainly saw a number of customers who still had some manual DR processes looking to automate those and looking to go virtual. But obviously, as Chris said, the challenges remain that we need to be vigilant around DR, and we think we put a solution around one-click DR to make that easier for our customers and our partners. So the thing I would encourage you to do as a next step would be to reach out to us. We're happy to do a complimentary design assessment. We really don't, in our experience, case studies, which I know are kind of often used by others in the marketplace as a way to size your environment. We've got a sizing process that doesn't require a tape study, and we think it's perfectly valid. So there's an opportunity to do a quick design assessment, to learn more about ZVT, and to get a sense for what it might look like in your environment. So we would encourage you to do that. And I'll move on to just the contact slide and say thank you to everyone for your time. We'll spend, I guess we've got about 8 minutes, Janine, to cover some Q&A, and we'll be at the top of the hour. Thank you.
Great, Michael. So there's a lot of great information here, and I know you'll want these slides. So if you join late, just a reminder that you can download the deck right from the platform. Check out event resources and click on that drop-down menu. Be sure to do that before we conclude our session. And then one more thing here, there is a ZVT white paper. You'll notice there's a link on this slide. That's actually a live link. So be sure to click on that as well and have access to that white paper. And with that, Michael, let's get to the first question. What configuration changes are required on the IBM mainframe and the legacy virtual tape system to support the ZVT hostless migration engine and ZCC?
Thanks, Janine. This is Sean. So very good question. As it relates to hostless migration configuration, it's actually pretty straightforward and relatively simple. So you have to install the ZCC utilities on the mainframe, which we help the customer with. It's very straightforward to download the bundle and install the ZCC. And then there's some setup steps on the ZVT itself. You're obviously going to have your legacy tape system online already. You're going to have the ZVT implemented and configured to the mainframe. And then there's a couple simple steps where you define the devices on the legacy tape system that you're going to need access to for migration. Just like you would configure your mainframe with those devices, because the ZVT is emulating a mainframe, a FICON chipid, you have to define the devices that you're going to configure for migration. But that's really it. So it's really pretty straightforward in terms of setting it up and configuring it.
Great. I deploy a ZVT system with more than one virtual tape node. What options do I have to allocate FICON channels to balance the speed of migration while maintaining normal tape operations? And then, Sean, second part, how hard is it to reconfigure the ZVT channel from migration mode to normal virtual tape mode once the migration is complete?
Okay, so the first part of the question, if I have more than one virtual tape node in my ZVT system, I think it was how do I allocate the channels? Because you're going to have with two, let's just use an example, two virtual tape nodes configured in a multi-tenant or a multi-node format. So they share a database. You're going to have two FICON chipids per VTN, so 4 total chipids that you have to work with. We would typically recommend in that scenario just to split the ports. You could use 2 for migration and 2 for normal tape operations, and that's going to give you a very nice balance between migrating your tapes from the legacy system at the same time you're performing normal tape operations. So if you have more than 2 virtual tape nodes, you can split those chippets, evenly. You can, have more heavily weighted the chippets toward normal tape ops if you'd like, and fewer towards migration. But any combination works. And generally, we would say a 50-50 split is a good rule of thumb. But you can tweak that if you have, multiple virtual tape nodes. And then the second part of the question, I think, was how do you go back to standard? How difficult is it to reconfigure after you're done with migration and go back to normal tape mode operation? And it's very simple. It's literally a click in the GUI where you have the ability to define each FICON port on the VTN and what the behavior is going to be. So if it's currently in a migration mode, it's literally you change it back to standard virtual tape node in the GUI, and off you go. So it's very simple.
Okay, next question. ZVT hostless migration with ZCC looks great for a ZOS customer, but is there a way for a VSE customer to leverage this capability as well?
Absolutely, there is. We did a lot of discussing of ZOS because ZCC is specific to ZOS, but absolutely VM VSE customers can leverage hostless migration. We've done it in the field for quite a few customers already. It's not a problem. Typically, what we recommend as a best practice if you're a VM VSE user is to do what we would call a natural migration, meaning we configure the ZVT online and you just point your new mount request to the ZVT, and then over a period of time, your backup volumes are going to age off of your legacy system and reside on the ZVT over a given number of weeks, let's say, over a month period. You're going to do a natural migration of the bulk of your backup data in that example. And then the remaining tapes, which might be considered static tapes or archive tapes, you can use hostless migration to migrate that set of tapes, the static tapes, the data that's not changing, or the archive data. You can do that what we would call in a big bang format. So we typically recommend doing that offline in a maintenance window, migrate hostlessly directly from your legacy system to the ZVT, and then off you go. So a little different recommendations if you're a VM VSE user, but it's still the power of hostless migration applies. You can still do it, absolutely. We just recommend doing it in a maintenance window format, kind of in a big bang, as opposed to during normal tape operations, because ZCC is not part of the management of the migration.
Okay, I think we have time for this one as well, Sean. So you say no mainframe cycles are used for hostless migration, but if ZCC is installed on the mainframe and performing all of its management and migration functions, doesn't it require mainframe cycles to do those functions?
That is a very good question, and I guess I would segment it this way. The industry unique part about hostless migration is it absolutely migrates your data without any involvement of the mainframe or mainframe cycles to actually import the data. It's a direct connection between the legacy system and ZVT. The data is not read into the mainframe and written out by the mainframe. It is a direct import from the legacy system to the ZVT. Now, that said, you have ZCC installed on the mainframe, which is providing some control and some management functionality for the migration process. But I would tell you that is a very thin layer of management cycle, or I should say IO cycles required. So there's some commands that do go, are sent from the host down to the ZVT in terms of mounting tapes and handing off to the ZVT, keeping things synchronized. But it's a very, very minimal amount of IO cycles required. The bulk of a migration is, of course, moving the data, and that does not involve the mainframe whatsoever.
Great, thank you. That's all the time we have for today. Do know that Mike, Mark, Sean, their email addresses are here on this slide. Those are also live links. So if you do have more questions, obviously they've been generous enough to provide their email address. Feel free to reach out. I want to thank everyone for attending today's webinar. I especially want to thank the team at Optica Technologies for sharing their expertise with us today. Later this week, we will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the recording of today's webinar. That concludes our webinar. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day and stay well.